Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching the third installment of our special broadcast called Namaste Trump. We will delve deeper into the India-US relationship in all its facets and dimensions, economic, strategic, cultural and people-to-people ties with the help of two new guests who will help you, the viewer, know what it takes to be on top of the news. All right, joining me in the studio are Ambassador Mohan Kumar and Dr. Harinder Sekhon. Now, they need no introduction, but still for the benefit of viewers who might not be familiar with them, Dr. Kumar is the Chair of Research and Information System for Developing Countries, a New Delhi-based think tank which engages in policy research relating to trade, technology, investment, development, connectivity and South-South cooperation. He was a career diplomat. He held several positions in the Indian Foreign Service, including India's ambassador to France. And Dr. Sekhon has over 3 decades of research, writing and teaching experience on various aspects of India-US relations, US policy and strategy in Asia and regional security challenges in South and East Asia. All right, if I can come to you first, Ambassador Kumar, help us put this visit into context for our viewers. What are your expectations from the Trump visit to India?
So, I think from several points of view, this is an important landmark visit. First of all, this is the first visit that President Trump is making to India. And I would be inclined to think for somebody like President Donald Trump, seeing is believing. And I think he will get a better idea of the kind of country he is dealing with. That's important in its own right.
Sure.
The second, of course, it cements and solidifies the personal chemistry between the two leaders. I think both leaders are, to my mind, strong and decisive. And for such strong and decisive leaders, chemistry plays an important part.
Right.
And we've seen it on display, Madison Square and other places. So I think you will find that that is an important aspect. But more than anything else, from a substantive point of view, I really believe that the international landscape has never been so confused as it is now. I've also been a student, so to speak, of foreign policy, and it's clear to me that one particular era has either ended or ending, which is the liberal international order post World War II, and we are yet to embark on another order. Now, in this period of strategic uncertainty and confusion, I am hoping that as a former diplomat, that the visit will contribute to some kind of strategic convergence and strategic understanding between the two countries and between the two leaders. I tend to view this as extremely important for India at a time when we are practicing what I choose to call strategic hedging.
Right.
When we ourselves are not clear what kind of relations can happen between India, China, India, Russia and other countries, I believe that this is a country, United States, with which we have so much in common in terms of values and so on, and so much has happened. There is no question that in the last 20 years, the most transformative relationship in Indian diplomacy has been with the United States. But I still think we need to have more strategic convergence between India and the US in order to really tackle this uncertain global political landscape.
All right. On that note, Dr. Sekhon, what would you expect from the Trump visit to India in terms of symbolism and substance?
I think it's going to deliver on both. Symbolism, it will build upon Howdy Modi. You know, you saw the hype which was generated in Texas, and now with Namaste Trump and this big mega event in Gujarat. And Trump's expectations, of course, are very high because he thinks, you know, the large number of people who are going to come. And I think what we should not miss out on is that Trump comes at the beginning of an election year.
Right.
And this is his last year of the first term. So it is a very important visit.
Absolutely.
And he also wants to tap into the Indian diaspora through this visit. And he was probably hoping, I think it's a mixed bag for both India and the United States. Trump must have hoped to have got the trade deal because he's negotiated a deal one with China. He's done the FTA with Canada. And if he could have wrapped up one with India, even if it was limited in scope during an election year and had sent the message, but that does not seem to be happening. So I think to overcome that, we have to focus more on the strategic aspect and look at areas of strategic convergence between India and the United States. And as Ambassador Mohan Kumar has already said, I think the United States has been the most transformative relationship, and it is a very important partner for India because they are the ones who have helped raise India's profile in the international arena with the nuclear deal. I mean, so technologically, I think we need to focus much more on the United States, and our future really lies in looking for areas of further convergence and overcoming the plateau phase of US-India relations, which a lot of people feel our relations are not going anywhere.
Indeed. Clearly, Ambassador Kumar, two key drivers of India-US policy relationship. One is trade, the other is defense and security. Let's talk a bit about trade, if you will, Ambassador Kumar. Even if the two leaders fail to secure or clinch a trade deal in the next few days, how would you describe the relationship insofar as trade is concerned going forward, even beyond the Trump-India visit?
Truth be told, I think trade between India and the US has failed to keep pace with the other important aspects of the relationship. So if you ask me very frankly, the rest of it has been absolutely transformative, and it's gone from strength to strength. The trade, I would have to be honest, it has made some improvement, but it has not kept pace with the rest of the...
So what are the sticking points, if I might ask you, for the benefit of viewers who might not be familiar with the intricacies of the trade negotiations? What's keeping the two sides from clinching a trade deal?
So one of the important things that the Americans have always harped to Indian negotiators is just the extent of tariffs. So the Americans tend to view trade as an import-export kind of thing, and they think that our applied tariffs, I mean, I don't want to get into in front of your viewers about bound tariffs and applied tariffs, but just the applied customs duty on American goods, wherever they export, if they export to Japan, they export to Europe, they export to other countries, they don't face such high tariffs, not even to Mexico and Brazil. So that is the problem number one. And what has happened in India's recent trade history is that we have increased tariffs on a fair number of items. So that is something that is which has not caused great happiness among our American friends. So that's the problem number one. Problem number two has been our level of intellectual property protection. There are genuine differences between India and the United States about the level of intellectual property that each society should have. The Americans have always taken the view that a patent should actually be granted for anything that has innovation. India takes the view that you need to have, especially in the area of pharmaceuticals, some balance between public health and innovation. So that is the second area where I think there is a critical divergence of view. I would say the most important of them all is, and that is where I am particularly happy that President Trump is coming to India. There is a feeling in America that India is no longer a developing country. Of all the issues in which there is a misunderstanding, I would say this is the biggest. I think American interlocutors should come to India, go out of Delhi and see for themselves the level of development in India. And you don't need, it's not rocket science. If you look at places which are not relatively well developed in India, you would understand that India is very much a developing country. Now they go by the share of world trade in specific areas like IT and pharmaceuticals. They extrapolated by saying that no, you are not a developing country. And so that is, to my mind, an important area. In fact, the one thing that really needs to be resolved is the restoration of the generalized system of preferences, GSP, which the Americans have withdrawn vis-a-vis Indian exports. There is an American tendency to bracket India and China in the same breath with regard to trade, but China is a 14 trillion dollar economy, and we are a $2.7 trillion economy. So some of these areas, I am beginning to think this can only be resolved at the level of Prime Minister Modi and President Donald Trump. I don't know if it will get resolved during this visit, but I would very much, as an ex-trade negotiator, I'll be honest, and I know I'm going to cause a little bit of discontent among many of my friends. Trade is too important and too strategic a matter now not to be left to the prime ministers and presidents. I would rather that Prime Minister Modi and Trump sit down, thrash it out. Otherwise, if you leave it to officials, this will go on and on. So I whichever way the outcome is, my sincere wish is for a substantive dialogue to commence at the level of President Trump and Prime Minister Modi on trade. This is absolutely vital if the relationship is not to be derailed.
All right, so as Ambassador Kumar says there, he is looking for a top-down diplomatic initiative by the two principals, the two leaders, to hammer out a trade deal on the margins of the Trump-India visit. But if I can come to Dr. Sekhon now. Dr. Sekhon, unlike trade, defense ties seem to be more robust. Are you satisfied with the current state of play in India-US defense ties in terms of co-production and transfer of technology?
I think there's no room for complacency there either. The DTTI had promised a lot, and we have signed the foundational agreements, and we've had the 2+2 dialogue at the ministerial level. We've elevated that. But unfortunately, there as in trade, I think I'll get back to the point Ambassador Kumar was making. The US needs to be sensitized to the fact that India is still a developing country. There is a huge disparity between what is showcased in Delhi and Gurgaon and the glitzy malls of Mumbai and our genuine problems which we face in the hinterland. And one is agriculture. The Americans think that India is a market. We are a huge market, no doubt, but they really need to be sensitized that even when we come to defense, I think we have our systems in place, and the US is the one which took this stance that India needs to be developed as its ally in the East. And if that so be it, then I think what they did for China, I mean, it's the US which facilitated China's rise. India is not going to be a competitor in the way China has emerged as a competitor to the US. But I think India being more benign and a democracy, there should be greater talk between the two leaders. And it's not because we in Lighthizer, we have a very conservative person and he does not let go. And in trade, you've witnessed that they've been changing the goalposts even in the agriculture negotiations. Similarly, in defense, we've made a lot of headway, but most of the equipment which we keep talking about has come through the FMS route, the foreign military sales route. And this has not been through the RFP and bids being made because we are still mired in this problem of defense offsets. So I think that is a problem which we need to overcome. And if we have signed the foundational agreements, the time is now ripe to have co-production in defense manufacture. The Indian companies are ready to, we've opened it up and up to 100% FDI in a private enterprise. So I think what has been done for the howitzer gun, which is not really rocket science, but something like that, we need to identify a few more landmark areas. I mean, I don't say that we can go into airplane manufacturing or the jet engine technology, we're aiming too high. But there would be a lot of other critical components. We've done so much with Israel. Why can't we do that with US, which is actually the repository of all that technology? So we really need to identify areas in in artificial intelligence, lasers, remove those hiccups in artificial intelligence. I mean, it's very easy to say not to do work with Huawei, but I think the Indian companies are very comfortable because if they do something in 5G, they need to go only to one provider, whereas if they go to the Americans, they need to go to 4 different places to put that whole basket of goodies together. So I think these are some of the areas which we really need to look at in technical, and it needn't necessarily be defense technology. It can be medical equipment, lasers, artificial intelligence. Those are the areas where we could actually benefit, and the US needs to realize, I mean, they could tap into the Indian healthcare market rather than just telling India that you do not subscribe to our IPR rules in drug and pharma sector. So, I mean, it's endless, but I think
sky is the limit.
The sky is the limit, and I
but
think
as
the time
Kumar mentioned, the two leaders need to
really
drive this relationship top down.
I mean, you really need an impetus to be given to this
Absolutely.
relationship, because for the last 15 years we've been stuck in the same place. You know, agriculture has been a sticking point, economy has been a sticking point, but in defense, if you really scratch the surface, we've just been buying military hardware.
Absolutely.
So that is where we really need to take this to the next level.
You raised a number of valid points, Dr. Sekhon. Ambassador Kumar, since Dr. Sekhon mentioned the Indo-Pacific, now talking about the Indo-Pacific, President Obama spoke first about a pivot to Asia, then rebalance to Asia. Now, President Trump has spoken about a clear and well-defined Indo-Pacific strategy. Now, what's in it for India and the US, number one? And number two, on the issue of 5G, is there any dissonance between India and the US on Huawei?
So I'll begin by talking about the Indo-Pacific, and then we can address the issue of 5G.
Right.
On Indo-Pacific, what I have seen over the last 3 months leads me to say there is a lot more convergence now between United States and India, now that we have raised it to the ministerial level.
Right.
So the first thing that I would say is that there is a large convergence now between India, Japan, Australia, and United States on the necessity for a free, open, inclusive Indo-Pacific.
Right.
Now, different countries emphasize different parts of this free, open, inclusive, but we don't have to get into that. I think India has played a very, very clever and difficult diplomatic game. The idea is to make this not seem like we are all ganging up against China. Russia has not bought into this idea of an Indo-Pacific grouping, Quad. In fact, as recently as the Raisina dialogue, the Russian foreign minister said, what is Quad? I'm not able to understand. So, India, among all the countries, it's easy for the United States, Japan maybe to say what they say. For India, it has been a very delicate diplomatic exercise. But at the same time, it is vitally important for India that the sea lanes of communication in the Indian Ocean and in the Indo-Pacific area, however you define it, and the easiest way to define it is Bollywood to Hollywood, whatever you define, whatever you choose to define it, is made free and open in terms of nobody impeding the free flow of traffic. Your viewers need to know that 80% of trade goes through sea lanes, and now you have undersea optical cables.
Right.
So with those two issues at stake, I do not see how India can just keep quiet. I mean, I don't want to raise the issue of the Belt Road Initiative, but the Belt Road Initiative is an issue on which India and the United States share exactly the same point of view. And it's very hard to think of Indo-Pacific, the Asia-Africa growth corridor, the rest of it, without really keeping in mind BRI. So frankly, I think it is in India's fundamental interest to see that there is absolutely no room for divergence, at least between United States and India and Japan, on this issue of free and open Indo-Pacific. Now, as far as the 5G is concerned, I understand the government of India has taken a decision to allow the participation of Huawei in trials. I emphasize the word trials, because a final decision will have to be seen, and this is not an area where I would, like a good Babu, go for L1. You know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
L1 is the lowest tender, and in all the Government of India procurement rules, you will say we need 3 participants in a tender. You go for L1 because L1 is the lowest price tender. I mean, I think that is too facile a way of approaching Huawei. Now, what we again need to do is to have a substantive conversation with the Americans, that if the Americans feel as strongly as they feel on Huawei, and they have made it clear to UK and many of the other allies, My question is, can you give us an alternative? That is absolutely vital for countries like India, because our market is big, and as Dr. Sekhon was hinting, we need to also make progress in these areas if this is going to be the fourth industrial revolution. So, I mean, Americans and the Europeans, through Nokia, Ericsson, have to get their act together on this one. How tough is it to bring down the cost when there is a market like India waiting for you? I've never understood why people are not more aggressive. I mean, the Chinese, you know, they are aggressive about this, as they should be about markets. But I've always wondered why the same degree of aggression is not shown either by the Europeans or the Americans. So on 5G, obviously we still have some wiggle room. I think we are not, the crunch time is not upon us, but I think we need to have a very good understanding of what the Americans are saying. For example, can they share their assessment of Huawei with us? Why is it that they feel that this is absolutely not in their interest? I'm not saying it is against our interest. I'm saying it is against American interest. Let's understand where they are coming from. And secondly, as I said, please give us an alternative.
Sure.
It's only then that we can make progress on these issues.
Indeed, fair point. Dr. Sekhon, I want you to weigh in on the twin issues, one 5G and Huawei, and the second on the Quad. Now, in your estimation, is Quad an idea whose time has come, that India needs to raise its profile within the Quad, be more visible at the regional level? Because India says Quad is not against anyone, it is for something. So, your thoughts on 5G and the Quad?
I'll speak about the Quad first, because the Quad is something, you know, which the VIF started a track 2 think tank dialogue as back it was in 2013 that we had the first Quad dialogue with 4 leading think tanks from the 4 participating countries. And now I think with it, there's a lot of traction because of the renaming of Asia Pacific as Indo-Pacific and the elevation of the Quad. I think India has shed a lot of its hesitation, and the ministerial level Quad dialogue which was held, we did not shy away from it. But I think it's not just India. All the 4 participants, are, with the exception of the United States, Japan and Australia also have to do a lot of balancing with China, because they are economically, China happens to be the biggest trading partner. So, to say that, you know, and it's not about China containment, because we talk about a free and open Indo-Pacific as Ambassador Kumar just talked about it, and I think India sticks to that, so does America. It might be our viewpoints are different, but for India, China is also a very important geographic partner. We share a very long border with China. So, keeping that in mind, we have to balance our interests in the Indo-Pacific, in the Pacific, vis-a-vis our interests on our land borders. We've got a tricky border issue. We all know about the role which Pakistan plays at China and also in the United Nations. So, the United States is putting its weight behind us, but I think till the time the US does not articulate an equally vociferous policy for the Indian Ocean, we have to balance our interests vis-a-vis the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. So, to say that the Quad is not important, that is not correct. We have put our weight behind Quad, we have articulated a policy, we say it is open to all, but it has to be a rules based order, and everyone follows the international rules and norms. It should, and when we speak with Russia and all, I think we've also articulated that India does not seek either a US led order, nor a Chinese led order, nor a Russian. You know, I think it should be equal and open to each one. And also the smaller local countries like Vietnam, Indonesia and all. So, you have to evolve an order which is acceptable to all. For Japan and Australia, they are US ally partners and India is not. So, this is something the US needs to keep in mind.
So, there is an asymmetry within the Quad as well?
I would not say an asymmetry, you know, it's the kind of relationship. The US would want us to sign along the dotted line, which India cannot do. We are not, we are a strategic partner of the United States, but we are not a military alliance partner dating back to post World War II. So those are the things which do come in the way, because but now I think even Japan is questioning the US security umbrella because of the perceived withdrawal of US from the international arena. But so I don't see there's a difference, but I think we are also talking a lot about connectivity corridors, both in the Indo-Pacific and in Africa. When it comes to 5G, I think I touched upon it, and then Ambassador Kumar has already detailed it. We really need to ask the United States that, we are not comfortable, because there is a questioning of how far to go with the Chinese when it comes to IT and technology and all. When I was with the NSCS, even at that time, this debate was there that, you really cannot compromise your security. But at the same time, we need to have a viable alternative, because we are aspirational. We are an aspirational country. Look at the size of our youth. We need to create that environment where we develop, we have the potential, because if it is not done, the technological transformation is not done in the next 3 to 4 years, this is very crucial for India. Here is a government which came on the plank of development, smart cities. So you have to deliver now. You have to start delivering. And I think that is where the Americans and the Europeans, and plus we need to negotiate harder with them, that what is the alternative?
Indeed.
And I think I talked about if they can give us a comprehensive basket for the technological innovation that India seeks. That is the important part.
Indeed. I'm running out of time. So one last question to both my guests, starting with you, Ambassador Kumar. Your thoughts on the potential US-Taliban peace deal and its implications for Indian interests in Afghanistan, given the fact that we've had a very testy relationship with countries in our neighborhood, especially Pakistan, given its close fraternal ties with Taliban. So how do you look at the implications of the US-Taliban peace deal, and especially from our security perspective?
So I think we will have to accept two things.
Okay.
One, that United States does not want to stay anymore in Afghanistan, or at least it will reduce its presence substantially. I think it's a fair point. You may not like it, I may not like it, but the fact is they've been there for a while. And this is a lot of money. There is consensus in the United States that they must get out. So I think that's something that India has to reconcile itself with.
Okay.
Second, I would say, as long as it is Afghan-led and Afghan-accepted, I would frankly have no problem. I know this is not exactly the same as Government of India's policy. I'm taking the liberty of expressing this as the head of a think tank. For me, the touchstone is, does the Afghan population accept it? And does the process itself, is it led by Afghan nationals? For me, that is an important touchstone. If those two criteria are met, then I would just accept it and then take some measures to take care of our interests. We have significant development economic interests now in Afghanistan. There are enough people in Afghanistan who would not, I would say, let anything happen to it. And we have to do what we have to do to protect our interests in Afghanistan.
Sure. Point taken, Ambassador Kumar. Dr. Sekhon, your last words on the US-Taliban deal and your thoughts on the mainstreaming of Taliban and its implications for India.
The deal is something which we will have to accept. And as has been said, that it has to be an Afghan-led. But I think India has a positive advantage so far as its acceptability is concerned. The Afghan people recognize the work which India has done without any political motivations and playing any political role over there. And that has not gone unnoticed. So if India can find inroads, because we cannot abstain from the changes which are going to take place in Afghanistan. It was Trump's call even during his first election campaign that he would bring back the troops, and this time he's definitely going to. And I think the US would leave some safeguards and force in Afghanistan to make sure that it's not back to normal and it is not a chaotic state of affairs. And it is there that India needs to find interlocutors within the new Afghan setup to continue its work of rebuilding and the soft power, whether it's building hospitals, roads. We've invested very heavily, and we really need to capitalize on that and continue with that effort.
All right, on that note, Dr. Sekhon and Ambassador Kumar, thank you so much for joining me on the discussion. Appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap on this special broadcast. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.